Hey, Wendy? Wendy, is it a light? That little light or no? I can't see what the hell I wrote. Huh?
They had it on the other
It's extremely quiet, huh? Where is he? Good evening, Mr. Abe. Good to see you in LA. And welcome back to the real Forbidden City. I think you'll find that the city you left is not the city you've returned to. As you know, Los Angeles began, thanks. Oh, you're gonna hold it? Jesus Christ. No, this is too complicated. You do it. Thanks. Little. Jesus. I think you'll find that the city you left is not the city you've returned to. As you know, Los Angeles began an architecture revolution some years ago. You were a young participant. And I think it's fair to say that the LA Revolt ended in unequivocal victory. What constitutes victory? Victory means we can now see the built consequences, not only in small experimental structures, but in enormous projects going up around the world today. Victory doesn't mean that design in Los Angeles has made the world better or worse. What it means is that Los Angeles architecture made the conceptual pro forma different. Los Angeles won that battle of poetry and conception, and we accept the laurels for 30 seconds or so. But the consequences of the battle is a subject for historians, and if there is any durable tradition here, it's that Los Angeles is never a venue for historians. We're architects, and that's not a mere professional designation. It often defines a life. So what's the LA lesson? Celebrate the victory, but the victory is ephemeral. And now we come to the next step, and you've come to help us with that. And I think you'll find the collective mind of Los Angeles substantially more self-conscious about its role in the design discourse than when you first arrived. And that self-consciousness is sometimes bad for our health. Cure it when you find it. Too much seriousness, what we owe, to whom, who's looking and listening, and we emasculate that exploratory, speculative, often clumsy process of experiment. You and your generation can continue to remind us that Los Angeles should be forever prepared to stumble, to err, to miss the presumed mark. The advocacy of that experimental mindset means being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's the enduring tradition of non-tradition. Los Angeles at its best, is less a city of established personalities, more a city where what else you got has an established constituency. The architecture discourse in Los Angeles at its best cares nothing for institutional limits or definitions. Not my school or your school or their school. LA ain't the place for institutional sectarianism. Institutional competition takes us off our subject. So what's the subject? Probably easier to define in retrospect. Perhaps, if you can name it before you do it, then you know it a priori. And if you know it a priori and can name it, it won't work here. Ulysses told the Cyclops, "My name is no name." LA architecture has no name. Notwithstanding numberless efforts to apply a label. Collaboration, another name for friendship, will be essential. Institutional perimeters, USC, UCLA, SCI-Arc, Art Center, are irrelevant. In the broadest sense, the condition of the city is the unnamed subject. When you left, LA celebrated architecture as event. Today, Los Angeles is in process of defining the constituent parts of a coming world city. No longer simply the single building, but architecture as a building multiple, and the city as the main event. You will recall, Los Angeles architects used to talk exclusively to friends and colleagues at places like the AA and the Bartlett and the Hochschule. We still do. But now we talk to Villaraigosa and Perry and Garcetti and Broad, and they're listening. The introverts have become extroverts without conceding the poetry. You're an aspiring poet. LA welcomes new poetry. You're an urbanist. LA is today uniquely a laboratory for urbanism. Let me make a prediction. 15 years from today, you'll be standing on a podium at UCLA, welcoming the new director of SCI-Arc to a city which redefined architecture, and then in your time, reimagined the city and exported the lesson. Please welcome Hitoshi Abe to Los Angeles and to SCI-Arc.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening. I'm very happy to be back in SCI-Arc and honored to give talk about my works here, the school I graduated. It was about 20 years ago. I was standing in front of SCI-Arc on Berkeley Street in Santa Monica, trying to find where the school is, because as you know, the school was located among the warehouses and almost integrated into them. So the school was invisible from outside until I opened the door, like today. And I was suddenly in the space that is full of possibility and energy. Everything started when I opened the door of this school about 20 years ago. So SCI-Arc is really rich place. According to Stephen Harris, space is a possibility and place is an experience reality. Rich place is where people can find the variety of possibility in its space, and new realities are constantly emerging directly through their experiences. Oops, my text is gone. But in many cases, place exists not as a dynamic reality with vitality, but as a strictly predetermined reality that limits the possibility of the space and alienate our opportunity to experience and to explore the space. So in order to realize and maintain this rich place, the space has to be filled with possibility, and people has to be very energetic so that they can explore the possibility of the space. I am interested in such a rich place. Skateboarding. I'm always fascinated by this sport, not only because it somehow represents Los Angeles in my mind, but also skateboarding is the act to physically confront the city and extract the new meanings from those that become poor place for many people. Skateboarding, we read and experience the city in their original way by using skateboard as their interface. By touching various surfaces of the environment with their skateboards, skateboarders create new place and move through them. Maybe the architecture that I'm pursuing is something like a skateboard. It is the interface between human and environment, and at the same time works towards the space to pull out the variety of the possibilities in order to produce new realities. In today's lecture, I prepared 6 keywords to describe the concept of my works. And hopefully, these keywords will be your skateboard to run through my work. Okay. The first keyword is form, chess and go. There are 2 kinds of form. First is static one, where the form is strongly related to the specific meaning, which is reproduced repeatedly over time. Second one is a dynamic one, which is generated by the relationship of the field condition. The difference between these 2 kinds of form is well described by comparing chess and go, the traditional board game of the West and East. Each element in chess is given their form according to the predetermined functions. There are various forms, but each form is reproduced repeatedly based on the form that is representing a certain roles in a relationship. On the other hand, there's no form that is related to the fixed role in Go game. There are only black and white stones in same shape and same size in this old Chinese board game. The meaning and the importance of the certain elements will change according to situation or arrangement. I prefer a form represented by Go, a dynamic and fresh form generated by uniting condition in a field and is not limited to certain meaning. This is the very much early work. This is a design of not the bridge, but handrail of the bridge. It was done 1993 and completed 1994. Mayor of this town asked me to turn this bridge into some kind of symbol of the city. And he had something like this in his mind. You know, this is a kokeshi doll, the very famous product from this area. But however, I didn't want to do it, of course, and I decided not to achieve a symbolism by pasting this kind of iconic figure, but which is strongly related to the meaning. So, like the arrangement of the Go, the form of this bridge design was generated by manifesting an invisible rules that constitute the condition of the site, achieving symbolism without resulting to highly meaningful icon. So this is a diagram, actually. And bridge was actually wrapped with an array of stainless steel triangles, which act as a medium for visualization of the local requirements, such as weight, restriction, bridge lighting locations, maximum water level, minimum clearance level, and etc. and abiding by giving sets of shape transformation rules, like rotation, scaling, translation, truncation, in that these conditions are surmounted by elements that cumulatively define the forms of the bridge, like a runner leaping the hurdles, like this one. This is how we created the shape. And this is a drawing to form the shape of the handrail, let's say. So the bridge became sort of like a landscape created by geographical activity. So I have to go really quick. Oops. So that my lecture ended. So this is how it's located. Many people like it, but many people also hated this bridge. So I'm not sure if it was quite successful project or not. The other project is the interior of the restaurant, completed in 1999. This restaurant located on the second floor of the building. And the owner wanted to have like a facade which is unique so that people will be attracted to come in. But since he doesn't own the building, he couldn't do the facade. So we proposed to do some sort of interior facade to enhance a experience of guests walking along the passage to the table. So this is what it is. And again, this is a diagram. We placed the corridor in the middle, and then there's lots of function located around it, and there's like a kitchen space and restroom and bars and etc. And because of the size of the space required, the corridor started to be curved, and then there's existing piping and structures, so the whole wall had to be kind of warped. And this is how we generated this kind of landscape of the wall. And this is a drawing showing how we actually define the wall. And this is an entrance, and you were walking in there, and then there is a bar, and the restaurant was quite big success, but the problem was like you feel already drunk before you drink anything. Building type. Just like a standard step for dancers, the building typologies are a very effective tool for design of public facility in which the identity of the end users is not known. However, over-reliance on them will ultimately restrict individual freedom of action, so they must not be the only models. Typologies may be expedient starting point for design, but they are not endpoint. So far, in designing a public space, an important point is to create a place that accepts variety of activities by shifting pre-existing typology. The uniqueness or the vitality of the dance can be produced by an improvisation when you get rid of the standard. So this is the Miyagi Stadium, and this is the reason why I left LA. Its design was done 1992 and construction completed 2000. It is a multi-purpose stadium for many kinds of sports, but it was built to have a World Cup in Japan. And as you know now, I'm a big soccer fan, but so I was very happy when we got this project because Japan lost against Turkey here in this stadium in front of me. main concept of this stadium is a fusion of the landscape and architecture. Since ancient times, the main function of the stadium typology has been to allow the maximum number of people to witness the event they contain, giving them the characteristic of centripetal closure. Additionally, high priority for the building performance at large-scale events is how to move people safely and according to the plan. And this aspect has gained even more importance today. But however, also the importance of everyday events that occurs in modern public space are also increasing. In order to revitalize this kind of small events, the issue is now how to make an institution more open and free. In this project for architecture typology with essentially closed character, the aim was to propose an open place without losing any functionality. So this is a diagram. This is a traditional shape of the stadium. Then we found there's the hill right next to it. So we integrated this kind of totally opposite character into one. So Miyagi Stadium fused this contrasting typological condition of the concave landscape of the stadium and convex landscape of the hill on the eastern side of the site. So in this way, we can integrate to create a place that combines the dualities of open and closed, unifies and dispersed, and architecture and landscape. So this is a photo. As you can see, the stadium is really fused into the hill. Sorry, there's more green now, but this photograph was taken long time ago. And this hill was designed as a kind of a park where people can walk or have picnic, and this function of the park, it was extended through the stadium with this skywalk. And because of the configuration, so that the structure of the backstand is basically lying onto the earth so that we could save a lot of money. And this is a drawing to show how the landscape can be combined with the geometry of the building. So this is what we did. We couldn't get these projects, too bad. And as you can see, the geometry of the landscape is sharing the same geometry with the building. And this is a drawing. Okay, the roof, main entrance to the stadium. You can see how big the stadium. This is a human, so. This is the interior racing track. So the roof of the backstand has kind of form that follows the overall organization, but the main stand has a kind of a roof which kind of flying over the structure and sticks out to the landscape. And this becomes the quite main motif of the stadium. It's a kind of a symbol of the entire park. Night view. Okay. After this stadium, we were a little bit wondering about importance of doing public buildings, because as you might know, this kind of big event doesn't happen so much. So after 2002, nothing big happening in the stadium we designed, so we were kind of depressed. And then we got this commission, so we took totally different approach to this small facility fusing auditorium and community center together for a Revolt town in Kyushu, which is a very small town in south part of Japan. Now, I think it is important to define its proper size and proper program in design of the small public facility like this one. In Japan, like many public buildings ended up with cost too much to build and maintain and not to be used so much like the stadium we designed. But the biggest problem all is also that some of them exist just totally disconnected with the surrounding community. The aim of this project was to make a compact, high-efficiency box that allows multiple usage. I wanted to get away from the way of architecture consists of series of rooms corresponding to each function to solve the program required. Conceptually, we wanted to create a very open box without any division into the room, but it is planted the seeds of many different activity. This is activity diagram, so you can see that sometimes the auditorium function takes over everything, sometimes community hall function takes over everything, or they share the space. This is a plan. This is a diagram showing the generation of the form. The space of the building is combined, is a combination of the one big space where all the main activities are focused. And then the collection of the smaller volumes for the various sub-functions. Then those small volumes were fused into main volume. And then these spaces are enveloped with wooden walls shaped like gills of fish, resulting in a kind of continuous gentle articulation of the single box. So this is a model. And this is a drawing showing the structure. The numbers of wooden frames transforming their shape gradually are standing at the intervals of about 90 centimeters in order to create this kind of complicated form. I'm always interested in the form of the space that one principle generates by projecting the variety of the condition. This is the drawings of the frames, and this is the construction photo. These are laminated pine wood, and then they are just assembling these together on site. So now it looks high-tech, but it's not. So this is the entrance, this is a corridor, and this is a multi-purpose space located in the middle of the building. And the wall of the auditorium can be opened so that the auditorium space can be connected with a multi-purpose space behind. It's not the big building at all. The capacity of the auditorium is about 200, so it's very small. But it is interesting to see something like this happening. You know, it is not the auditorium for official events or anything. The way they use is very informal. So when they keep this door open, the many different activities are really mixed. And so, you know, you will see kids watching and kids playing, and then there's parents wandering around in this back space. Then the room behind, there's kids preparing for next play. And it's kind of nice to see that different functions are kind of right next to each other and stimulating each other. And it works because maybe this is the community where everybody knows each other. But again, it's one of the utopian image we could have for the building. Night view. Oops. This is the other building called the Shumai, meaning Chinese dumpling house. This is not just a house for family, but it is very radically open to the society. The client who works for the local government lives with his wife and kids and grandparents, wanted the house very open for non-profit organization activity and also neighboring community. So this house is, comprise the following fields. One, this is a family common area, then private rooms. Private rooms was very minimized. Then the office for non-profit organization. This NPO provides environmental therapy for children with mental disorders. Then it was all wrapped with this concrete structure to support the entire structure up in the air. And also it creates some sort of buffer zone, could be open to many different activities like mental therapy or play therapy or some kind of local meetings. Or he said actually he wants to use this space for a local election campaign and also party for high school girls. I don't know what he meant. But I think it is a very crazy idea. Then I realized that, but it does represent the condition of the house in Japan right now. Sort of urban functions are brought into the interior of this house. And in the other words, the house actually expands into the city. And the boundary between private and public became so vague. And I'm not showing this completed because he has a problem to persuade his family because everybody is against that. So instead, I can show you this house. This house is basically designed with a similar concept with Shumai, Chinese dumpling house. This house is now called the Whopper, and you can see why. And this space has a children's hospital, and then doctors are living upstairs. And again, kind of buffer zone which could be open to public is created on the second floor. This is how it's been done. Actually, it has very interesting structure. This is a concrete structure, and then the third floor is supported by these steel columns, so that basically the concrete volumes are floating above the air. So then the second floor exists in between. Well, this is what it is. Sorry. The body, the third keyword. Body is at present the only interface for people to directly engage their environment, to perceive architecture through the conceptual filters of institution and program merely reaffirms predetermined meanings and escalate the difficulty of decoding the meaning of the place through the body. On the other hand, even if the program and context are stripped away, the direct presence of the body, the form of architecture, is sufficient to generate the meanings of the place in its dialogue with the body. This is the exhibition on our work at Gallery Man in Tokyo. When we think about the architecture show at the gallery, there are always models and drawings filling up the space, but those are just representation of the architecture which is not there. The show reveals absence of architecture against its purpose. I wanted to do something different. So what we did was the pieces from the building was cut off, I mean conceptually, and then just we put those pieces to create the new landscape. So you can see here all the fragments from different buildings we did. And because of that, the people who is visiting there can directly experience the piece, and then they can create their own images of the place. So this exhibition is not confined to the simulation and representation, but it is a place for direct dialogue between body and form. And these are models. Upstairs, we presented the model sliced like Damien Hirst's sculpture, so that you can look inside, and also you can walk through the building. This is the object we had to design for the exhibition called Extremely You last year. It was kind of strange exhibition because we had to work with a Spanish architect together to produce cylinder and cube, which will represent the architecture we think. And then we worked with Mancia and Tinon from Madrid, and their proposal was this box. And this is a photograph of the people, works in both office. And the idea was to show everybody behind the scene. I wasn't sure it was a good idea, but they insisted to share this idea. So I had to come up with different objects with the same idea. So what we did was, instead of showing scene behind visually, we decided to show it without any visual images, but sound. So this is object, and we put this special kind of a speaker. It's called a bone conductor. In order to hear the sound, you have to put your skull against this conductor. So we made a recording of the office, so me shouting at the people, or the presentation to the client, and it's all there. And also, in order to hear the sound, people have to hug this object. So the object had to look nice, so it's attractive enough to be hugged. So this is what it is. And people are actually hugging. And I like this image because, in a way, she is experiencing space by hearing sound and also feeling the sensation of the surface of this object. And in a way, she is fusing into this kind of environment, and it represents kind of architecture I'm very curious about. Soft boundary. The fundamental aspect of architectural design is to define a place by drawing boundary line. However, we are neither designing the submarine or designing for utopia that is separated from surroundings, environment. So the boundary line should not something separating inside and outside completely. It should be soft enough so that it can mediate each adjacent condition enough according to the situation. And as you know, many famous Japanese architects are very good at creating submarines. So this is a Seki Ladies Clinic. It's a maternity clinic designed in 2000. and completed 2001. It is located in a typical roadside in the suburban of Japan. In Japan, actually, expectant mother usually stays in a clinic for a week after the delivery. And for client, it's getting more important and to provide service and to be provided a very good service because to make the experience of giving birth richer was considered to be very important for new mothers. And because the doctors are really going for business, they want to create the new buildings and nice space. So that's why we got the job. So the client was very conscious about this issue. But the site we were giving was far from idealistic because it was surrounded by ugly building and it was in front of very busy roadside. So we had to come up with idea, but we didn't want to make, again, the submarine or Garden of Eden, which is totally separated from the area. You know, we could build a huge wall and put the trees, but that's not the way we wanted. So instead, we try to kind of create the soft boundary so that we can give some distance between the space inside and outside, but still people can feel the feeling of outside. And I thought that's the place where the child should emerge at the first time in this world. And this is how we did it. Just little bits of technique we did. First of all, huge second floor to protect the ground floor. Also, the openings are controlled so that you don't directly look outside. As you can see, this is the ground floor and this is second floor, and you put all the bedrooms upstairs, and there's a delivery room, waiting room, and this is a doctor's area. So basically, if you're in this room, you're looking in this courtyard, but also you'll be able to see the city through this gap in between the volumes. And plus, the waiting area was pretty much exposed to the parking lot. We didn't have much space, so we couldn't avoid that. So in order to also give certain distance between the meeting area and parking lot, we inserted some sort of visual buffer zone. So there's 2 layers of glass, and then there's a courtyard in the middle, so that you don't really directly look to the ugly parking lot. You can see here, there's a 1 line of the glass, and then there's 1 line of the glass here. Some little details. Babies and mothers and nurse. They looked happy, but actually they're actors, for their ad. And this is a waiting room. So sometimes they have this kind of a smorgasbord lunch style. And also they give lectures to new mothers because they tend to be very nervous about feeding babies and nursing babies. Night view, so the volumes are floating above the glass cube. This is the other building. It's a small office and a factory for the production of the prosthesis, artificial legs and arms, completed 2004. Yeah, this is not the building. This is the building we designed. The building is located in a very typical site in Japan. It's called a flagpole site in the center of the city. And the walls were built tracing the site boundaries in order to achieve the maximum floor area under the building height restrictions. The structure has no interior columns in order to make a free and flexible space inside. And because of the condition of the site, we apply this special structure. So the exterior structural wall comprises precast concrete panels that are stacked up and then post-dressed, like this. Then the whole floor is supported by these precast panels. And then since there's a hole in the middle, we had to also have a beam to hang all the floors from above. And this kind of arrangement gives panel and openings a uniform checkerboard arrangement, and placing windows just above the floor and just below the ceiling. And this window placement controls the view of the disordered surroundings and making a boundary that softly separates this place from the outside. Okay, this is a drawing showing how we put the steel rods through the panels. This is how it's been done. Again, the construction. This is a steel form, rebars, then casted everything. So this is a panel. Then panel was sent to the site. You can see how tight the site is. Then assembled together. So this is how it's, and tell you, this is very difficult to do. You cannot create this kind of a prefab concrete so precise. So we had a lot of trouble, but we did it anyway. The glass cube was basically hanged from the this column, from this beam. So it creates some sort of interior courtyard. And also this is a piece articulating the plan so that people are separated, but also they can feel each other. So it creates sort of sense that they are sharing one space and working together in one company, I guess. So this is a factory part. You can see the placement of the window